Well, hello everybody. My name is Alexandre Amaral. I'm a journalist from Brazil and a proud member of MILEN. Today is the roundtable discussion number 2 that we're having on how to fight hate speech. I'm very excited for today. I think it's going to be a very good topic. We're opening up for people to join us. So we had already a number of guests here. So I just want to go straight into it, dive in, get some Q&A. Because I think this is a topic that concerns a lot of us. But let me give you a brief introduction of what this is going to be about. So MILEN consists of 13 experts in media information literacy. We're an expert network that share a common vision that media education is a critical tool to prepare citizens for a responsible future. And especially at this time right now of Corona and everything that's going on, we think that's our responsibility to put our expertise in the benefit of the audience in this time. So to join me today, I have two people who know a lot of what they're talking about. Let me give you a brief introduction. The first of them is Osama Manzar. So Osama is the founder and director of the Digital Empowerment Foundation in India. He's on a mission to eradicate information poverty using digital tools. He's also a social entrepreneur, author, impact speaker, angel investor, and mentor. On the past couple of months before Corona, I was actually in India learning a bit more about Osama's project in general. And I must say it's very inspiring and it's a huge pleasure to have you here, Osama. How are you doing?
Thank you very much.
I can hear some noise. I'm just going to mute everyone who's not speaking, but then I'll mute you again. Okay, cool. How are you, Osama? Good?
Good, very well. It's raining here outside in Delhi.
Is it? Oh, it's cold here in Brazil, I can tell you that. Our second speaker, it's a miracle that we actually have her with us because she's so famous. She is Hania Bitar, the director and founder of PLARA, the Palestinian Youth Association for Leadership and Rights Activation. PLARA actually, as an organization, turned 20 years old last year, so congratulations on that, Hania. And she does a lot of other great stuff, and she's an extraordinary human being. So welcome to the discussion, Hania. Cool. So let's get started then. Osama, I have a question for you. You seem like the person to ask this to. COVID-19 does not care who we are, where we live, what we believe. Yet the pandemic continues to unleash a lot of hate against the most vulnerable. I know that's the case in a lot of places around the world, especially in India. So how is the situation there? How do you see this hate speech spreading? Has COVID sparked more hate among us?
In COVID situation in India, the hate speech situation can be divided into three parts. Initially, there was no hate speech as far as the COVID or Corona is concerned. It was more about misinformation, disinformation, and rumors initially. And I can give you a whole of what kind of rumors, and it's mostly health related, mostly belief related. But there was one incident which happened where some Muslim community guy who was from Tablighi Jamaat, they were found to be in one group in one location in Delhi, and some of them were found to be Corona infected. And then boom, then that was the spark that gave the whole factory of hate speech manufacturers and hate speech propagators, including those factories which is supported by very powerful people, started working online to create hate speech that all Muslims are actually coronavirus carriers, So if you are talking to Muslims, you're talking to such community, you're going to get it or anything, whether you're going to buy things from their shop or whether something. And we did a survey to find out what kind of rumors, what kind of misbeliefs, what kind of misinformation is floating around in India in various parts of the country. So among the hate speech related, these were very, very common, like Muslims are spreading COVID-19, Muslims are spreading virus by spitting on fruits and vegetables, Tablighi Jamaat, carrying out Corona terrorism as a part of Islamic conspiracy, Muslims are throwing money on roads laid with coronavirus. All Mayo community or the Jamaatis, I mean, Mewat is a community and Mayo are the community in one area. So all the Muslims of that area are actually Corona, infected. So these kind of hate speech has been going on. So that was the second stage. And the third stage is actually a consolidation where, there is a whole lot of political hate speech, religious hate speech, social hate speech, and all that started propagating. And you can go on and on and on. What is very interesting is that there are several media outlets, there are several groups who are actually always looking out for excuse to create hate speech. Our belief is and observation is that hate speech is not something that naturally and originally comes from the people in general. Hate speech are always and always prejudiced, motivated, collaborated, and designed to put on social media to become viral and so on and so forth. So the origination of any hate speech is always a manufacturing unit, owned by somebody or, ruled by somebody and so on and so forth. So hate speech is not something which is part of the common people's existence. Hate speech is something that certainly becomes viral when it becomes faith related, and that is the reason why faith and religion always becomes the associating or complementing part of creating hate speech, and that's what it is at the moment in India. But we are in the third stage where it's slightly slowed down, and the hate speech related to COVID or because of the COVID and all that, because the focus is also gone on many of the very natural calamities that has happened in India, in the sense that the whole migration that is happening because of COVID, the jobs have gone, the migration, reverse migration is happening and so on and so forth. There is a whole lot of focus on that area. So it looks like that the hate speech is slightly on the back burner, but misinformation, fake news, disinformation is flourishing. There is no combat on that. That's flourishing every day, every now and then. And that is coming up, at a metro level, at a cosmopolitan level, at a city level, at a town level, and also at a village level.
Interesting. No, I definitely want to get back to that question a bit more. But let's first hear Hania's side. Do you agree, Hania, as Osama said, that it seems mostly that when hate speech is created, it targets certain vulnerable groups and has a reason behind it that infiltrates the regular people's lives? I know that Palestine is having that trouble with the Palestinians who work in Israel and go back. So maybe if you could tell a little bit about that. I'm gonna unmute you just a second. For some reason, I can't do that. Can you try to unmute yourself, please?
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you, Alessandro. This means you should not put me muted again. Keep me on so I can speak all the time. Hello, everybody, and we're so glad that you have decided to join us. So we thank you for your precious time, and we hope that this will be fruitful to all. In fact, I want just to establish two facts before I answer your question. The first thing is that there is no agreed upon definition of hate speech. It's a very elusive term. And yes, we know it has to do with really, wanting, advocating actually harm to bring, whether through violence, through speech, hate speech, or so on, against specific groups of people or who are different. It has to do a lot with really not being tolerant to difference, of believing in oneself and selfishness somehow, and that we are right and the others are wrong. And so it has to do with a lot with discrimination, and lots of issues are related to freedom of expression. So when you really revise hate speech during the years and how it's really the rhetoric and the studies concerning hate speech, you will also feel that it's interrelated and connected with so many things. But there is another fact which I feel is very important, which is the fact that what happens online in terms of hate speech is very much related to what happens on real ground. So they are very much interconnected. And the studies actually to really try to understand why this is happening are not sufficient. Worldwide and led by UNESCO, there are lots of efforts to find solutions to hate speech, but not enough studies to study the causes. And I think this is related to our human nature, because now with the corona, with COVID-19, I think there was an evolvement in the definition and how we look at hate speech. And what I mean, and this conforms actually with the very definition of hate speech being very elusive. I feel that sometimes, because of a certain context or circumstances, like what happened with COVID-19, suddenly hate speech develops against targeted people whom you would never have thought you would be in disagreement with or you would hate. Like in the Palestinian case, we can talk about 2 cases where we witnessed severe hate speech online and physically on the ground. The 2 groups actually, as I mentioned to you previously, Alexandre, one of them is our Palestinian workers. So our Palestinian workers, we are a nation under occupation. Our economy is very weak. So we have around 120,000 Palestinian workers who apply for permits to go and work inside Israel. And now with Corona, of course, Israel wants those workers because they depend on them in construction work, in many kinds of work. So also Israel needs the Palestinian workers. But the Palestinians, it was a big problem for us as Palestinians to see that Corona was really developing and spreading faster in the Israeli side than it was developing on the Palestinian side. So we had more control of it. And so the fact that Israel actually declared that, okay, we will allow the Palestinian workers to come and work inside Israel only if they sleep over for 1 month at least. So when they went to work and to sleep over where the boss, supposed to really provide for their lodgings, they found very extremely bad circumstances that are not suitable for lodging human beings. So many of them decided to come back home. They didn't want to work, or it coincided with Israeli holidays where people also had to come back to the Palestinian side. This created lots of fear in the Palestinian side. So many people became scared that, wow, those Palestinian workers, when they come back home, they will bring with them Corona. And at the Palestinian side, we didn't have enough units to really do the checkups. So this created physical confrontations, hate speech online, and it was very much prone to really develop drastically. Another group, another example on severe hate speech It happened against Palestinian Jerusalemites. So Jerusalem, actually, it's divided into East and West. The Israelis live in West Jerusalem, and we, the Palestinians, live in the East side. But we are very close to each other. We mix with each other. So many things are mutual. And so there were degrees or regulations coming out from the Palestinian Authority, allowing Palestinians from all over the West Bank to go and visit certain cities, you know, to move around, but it was restricted to Palestinians coming from Jerusalem, and I'm one of them. So really, it was really very frustrating because, you know, like they were looking at the Palestinian Jerusalemites as people who are in approximate connection with the Israelis, so they were more prone to get infected with the corona. And so this is why we had lots of hate speech and regulations on the ground against Palestinian Jerusalemites.
Thank you very much for your input, Hania. That was very interesting. And I think Osama could speak some of one of the points that you raised, which is the similarity between what happens online and offline.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a look at the appeal that the United Nations General Secretary, he said against hate speech a couple of days ago. He called on educational institutions to focus on digital literacy at a time when billions of young people are online and when extremists are seeking to prey on captive and potentially despairing audiences. So Osama, do we have to take special care of those people who are maybe accessing the online world for the first time, trying to hang on in there? How does digital literacy and media literacy plays a role into preventing that?
Alex, what is very interesting is that, you know, hate is such a thing. Hate or negative news or, you know, those kind of information which actually not very healthy, incidentally goes viral without being connected, you know. So even if, so if I take an example of rural India, where mobile penetration or smartphone penetration is not more than 200 million for more than 800 million people in rural India. But any, you know, hate speech or any viral fake news really goes viral in rural India, even though many people who do not have connectivity, who do not have a smartphone, it reaches to them. So certainly there is a community spread of hate speech, even though you may not be connected. That means if I have a smartphone, I have something that I receive, I forward it to many people that I know, but I also let people know who are my friends and may not have those kind of things. And this keep on going word of mouth for most of the people know. And it happens most with hate speech and fake news. So that's one part. The second part is, but if you do the same thing with positivity, if you want to do, let's say, literacy or information literacy or media literacy, that doesn't go viral, you know. In that case, we have to choose each and every person to actually do the, you know, training with them, or to do the, literacy with them, or do the awareness with them, and so on and so forth. So it certainly is a much harder and bigger task to do digital literacy or information literacy or media literacy. And one of the mechanisms that we have found out is that rather than depending on the virality or the digital inclusion or smartphone spread among the people that you must reach out. However, you must reach out to the people to make them hero out of the community that they live in. So they should be trained in what is media literacy. They should be trained in what is fake news. They should be trained in what is hate speech. They should be trained in what is misinformation. And they should be trained in how do they identify what is fake news and what is misinformation. For example, even you don't know how to recognize, you should know basic that you should not forward which is not authenticated. You should not share what is not, that doesn't come originally from your friend or anybody who is forwarding you, and so on and so forth. You know, so certainly the role of media literacy and information literacy and digital literacy is much harder, but the only way to do it is going by creating cadre in an offline mode, so that the people who are actually working at a community level, they must know what is the negative impact of misinformation, fake news, and hate speech, and they could actually connect with the people online or offline to tell what is right or what is wrong, and what is to believe and what is not to believe. And it is very important, therefore, to also develop media literacy toolkit, or the toolkit to identify hate speech or fake news, is to also concentrate in that how do we use offline methodologies, and how do we use traditional media methodologies or traditional information linkages methodologies to spread the techniques, or the spread the methodologies of fighting fake news or misinformation or hate speech.
Brilliant. Just a quick reminder to everyone, Enna beat me to the task, but it's that if anyone wants to ask any questions, the floor is open. I would ask you if you can either type them on the chat or raise your hand in the Zoom call, and then I'm gonna address you and unmute you so you can ask your questions. You can share your experiences, ask our participants anyway. While we wait for that, Hania, I have a commentary here from the situation in Brazil, and I would like very much to hear your opinion on it. On this Monday, the 25th, it happened in a historical decision here from the main newspapers of the country that we're no longer covering the official press release that happens from the president at the palace of the state every day. Why is that? Because there was so much hate speech inspired by the president himself and other people from the government. They call it even a hate speech cabinet, incentivizing people to actually assault journalists verbally or physically even. And we were seeing that getting out of hand, getting out of proportion. And we see the hate actually affecting media people and so many other professions like medics, doctors, and so on, from doing their jobs and into their personal security. We often see, as Osama pointed, like all these initiatives that we have from media literacy, they're very pinpointed. So we go person by person, and it's like we're planting seeds for the future for them to think critically. But what actions should us as MIL professionals take to stop the hate that is already being installed? What is already being spread out there that's affecting day in and day out in our lives?
Well, it seems that your presidency in Brazil is following the suits of Trump. So this is their hero, it seems. The attack and assaults on journalists, whenever they speak up against what they want to hear or what they want people to hear, so they become a target for hate speech and for action on the ground that really makes them feel isolated. And this is what actually Jay Waldron in 2012 talked about, that in hate speech, it's divided into two groups. The first group is to really dehumanize and diminish members of a group and make them feel unwelcome. So you are telling people, don't think you are welcome here. You are not part of us. You will not be part of this society. And the second part of hate speech is actually to build a kind of solidarity amongst people who share the same opinion. So if the president thinks the journalists or the doctors are the enemy because of what they say, so they try to convince people, don't be scared, we think like you. So we share a common ground when it comes to how we look at this targeted group of people, and this is why we have to attack them. And they start those campaigns via images, via sounds, via expressions, via speech, to really make their life hell and make them really fade away and turn people against them. So, and this is really what happens when it comes to hate speech. you try to make the life of others really like hell. So what do we do? How can we counter hate speech? Unfortunately, the government or the president or the ruling people in any country, those who really like make the decisions, they should be part of the solution. But unfortunately, we are finding them in many contexts, like the example you have given us in Brazil and in the United States and in many other countries, to be actually the one who are encouraging hate speech and who are behind hate speech. So let's put those extreme examples on the side. But when we look at solutions to hate speech, I think it has to be a comprehensive approach. I don't think anybody carries a magical stick that can be used to say, wow, this is the solution to hate speech. I think all of us should be involved in trying to really counter hate speech and replace it with more tolerance and understanding. When we say we are all responsible, I mean the government has a role, because there is a soft approach and a hard approach. The soft approach can be adopted by the civil society, can be adopted by journalists, can be adopted by educators in terms of raising awareness, in terms of telling stories about the positive side of tolerance and loving and giving space to others and understanding. And there is the hard approach, which could be represented by rules and regulations and punishments against actually violators, against committers of hate speech. Now, of course, the debaters will come out and say, well, there is a very thin line between hate speech and freedom of expression. This is very true. But I think gradually, and when you analyze the hate speech, you can see that is it really freedom of expression, or it's really intended to harm and diminish and to really make the life of others like hell. And really hate has a big psychological effect. And this is why recently, in recent years, we see also the mediatory, like those companies who facilitate communication online, whether it's Facebook and Instagram or all those companies, they are developing tools and methods to really depict hate speech online and try to really also like come with buzzing signals, the same that they do with misinformation or fake news. So also like technically softwares and things have to be developed to also try to minimize the usage of hate speech. So all of it comes together with a package to really how to raise a citizen, a human being, who is really aware of all the impacts of all those things. I think we as human beings, we are becoming very, and so many things are falling upon our shoulders. We have to be very educated. We have to know how to depict that this is fake news, that this is efforts to manipulate our thinking and our thoughts, that this is hate speech and it's not just like simple, really like anger or simple whatever. So I think as human beings, the responsibility that we are holding in a digital world is growing day by day. Even us as educators, just 2 days ago, I saw there was like this promotion of the cover page of Time magazine. And I said, wow, this is one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. I love the graphics, so the Time magazine, and then you had like a dark page with the door opening, and from the door, Trump was leaving the door, and the caption was, time to leave. So I shared it. I'm the educator and the trainer. I fell into the trap of a fake news. So then I got this buzz to say, well, this is not really, it's not the correct caption. So anyhow, what I mean is the responsibility is big. It has to be shared. There has to be good intentions. There has to be cooperation on different levels, governmental, technical, civil society organizations, educators, and the media. The media plays a very, very important role in how also they try to combat hate speech on all levels.
That was brilliant, Hania.
Thank you.
Just saying, every time these two people open their mouths, I learned some new words of wisdom right here. Yeah, that is the $1 million question, isn't it? How do we fight hate? If anyone, I have a few more for them in case no one shows up. But if anyone wants to ask their questions, now it's the time. We have a couple of minutes to spare. Either please raise your hands on the Zoom app or type it in on the chat and I'll read it out loud. Okay? But maybe we could get practical here. I'm curious. I know that both of you are heads of big organizations, NGOs. You work with dozens, hundreds of people who actually are on the ground fighting hate speech. So you must have seen a lot of young people who are impressionable or even older people who come in and, oh, Nermeen has a question. I'm just going to finish me right through and I'll let her speak. That come already with all this hate installed. So how do you turn that into a practical level to both Osama and Hania? Now I'm going to unmute Nermeen so she can ask as well.
But also repeat your question, please, because it wasn't very clear for me.
Okay, sure. So how do you dismantle the hate that's already on the heads of the people that you work with?
Okay.
Please, Nermeen, ask your question. Feel free.
Okay. Hello everyone. I want to ask Hania and hello Hania. I want to ask you a question as a journalist, how we can deal with the hate of speech, especially in the contest.
In the contest? What do you mean?
Especially in the content.
You cut off, Nermeen. Could you repeat the question, please?
Okay. As a journalist, how can we deal with the hate of speech in the media, in the content?
المحتوى يعني المحتوى.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So Nermeen is asking, as a journalist, how can she fight hate speech through the content that is published, if I understood you correctly, Nermeen? I feel there are two ways. As a journalist, you can decide to really tackle hate speech directly, meaning whenever you see hate speech, you criticize it, you write against it, you really raise your voice that this is unacceptable, this is against human rights, this is against blah, 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 you know. So you can do it in this manner, or you can choose another path as a journalist, which is countering hate speech with actually the opposite way, meaning that instead of directly exposing hate speech, you try to expose the good behavior or positive behavior that is associated with a story that resulted from hate speech. I'll give you an example, so maybe you can understand better what I mean. I remember, I'll give the example of actually the Palestinian workers, you know. So we had a worker who worked in Israel, and he came back to his village in the Palestinian areas. And of course, on the borders, when he was checked, they told him, you have to stay for 14 days in your house and in a separate room in your house. Don't leave it, you know, quarantine. So this man went back to his family, and he was at home in his room for 14 days. Meanwhile, they needed to buy some groceries. So his little kid went to the shop nearby in order to get some groceries. And the moment the people saw that this boy was approaching the grocery, everybody was shouting, "Go back home, go back home. You know, you have corona, your father has corona. Now corona is in with the whole family." So the supermarket, they refused to let him in or to let him buy anything or to touch him or to take money from him. So the boy went crying back home. And at that moment, the father, he had two options, either to get out of the quarantine, and you know, we are Arab nations, like Brazilians, we have hot blood, we can fight with anybody. So he could go out and make a big fight in the street and with the shop owner and with the people in the street who were defaming his kids, or do something else. And this father, he decided to do something else. So, so actually what he did, he videotaped himself, and he was telling his story in a very funny way. He was saying to the people, "Believe me, I'm a human being. I am clean. They say I have to be in quarantine, but why you make me feel like a roach, like a rat? Nobody wants to approach me. Even my kid, what do you want? You want me to die of hunger and thirst? Nobody wants to approach us. Nobody wants to talk to us. Yes, I can be in quarantine, but there are ways to do it." So he did this video, and it started to go viral. And many journalists also picked this video and started to analyze it and to write about it. And you can't believe the impact it left. So instead of doing a big fight and blasphemy and, you know, all the bad words in the world you can imagine, in a very humanistic way, he told his story. He made us laugh and cry. He made us feel ashamed of our behavior as neighbors. Or it's not in my neighborhood, but you know, it can happen in any neighborhood. So what I mean, that sometimes, you know, whenever you want to confront hate speech, you have to be very wise, or else hate speech can become a real vicious cycle of violence that never ends. So this is my answer to you, Nermeen.
Thank you, Hania.
You're welcome.
That's a great answer, Hania. Now I'd like to hear some from Osama. We have another question in the chat. It's from Spark113. I believe that's Simon, which has also to do with examples, Osama. So fighting hate speech requires change of behavior. Can you give some examples from your side as well?
Yeah, so Simon and Alex, you know, I wanted to actually address that question, that hate speech, while I said earlier, is not a general behavior of the people, but is usually manufactured. But it certainly spreads on the behavior of the people, the faith of the people, the softness of the people, the mindset of the people, the prejudice of the people, you know, a lot of, you know, myths of the people and so on and so forth. You know, for example, I don't like a certain community. So if anything I'm going to hear against them, I feel like believing it, because even if it is, there is no proof. You know, the biggest fight against against hate speech and fake news is how do we work on prejudices, you know. We as a society and community live a lot with prejudices. We have, you know, prejudice about community, about religion, about faith, about belief, about trust, about so many people. So it certainly is a behavioral issue, and it's a serious issue. And in an era of knowledge economy and information world, and you know, the world of social media and viral, where any information that you have spread goes to the 10th person in less than a 10-second, you know, obviously this fight is not easy. And that's the reason why I said is that this whole phenomenon of fighting or combating hate speech and fake news certainly will depend on socio-behavioral, you know, nature of the people, but it is also a layered exercise or cadre-based exercise. So we will have to create a community of trust, you know. For example, COVID. In COVID, suddenly we don't trust anyone, you know. We just don't trust anyone. We are not going to even neighbor. We know that the neighbor doesn't have doesn't have COVID, but we are still not going. Why are you not going? And why are you not meeting? And why are you not socializing even to the trusted community within yourself? So it's very, very important that you create a trust-based community, that even if any information comes to you, you do not get caught by the information, leaving outsiders and not insiders. That is exactly what the nature is, you know. When information comes, let's say we are a gated society and community. If any information coming from outside with my community, why shouldn't we check with our community? Why shouldn't we, even if you have a virtual community, why we don't check it with virtual community that you have? Trust-based community. We have created a society and community over a period of last 4 or 5 decades, which is very, very oriented towards materialism and self-achievement and self, you know, goals. And that's the reason why we have created a community of no trust on each other, except trusting money, except trusting your own advantages, you know. So therefore, the fighting fake news and misinformation and all these things is a challenge to the humanity, that how you create, you know, very, very trusted, close-knit community for yourself.
Now I was myself muted and didn't know. Thank you very much for that, Osama. I think it's a very thought-provoking answer. We're coming to the end of our roundtable discussion here. It's the last opportunity for anyone to say a few words if they want, or to leave a resonating message for people out there who want to fight hate.
I would like to say that, you know, as my ending note is that we as MIL professionals and MIL experts, any phenomena that comes, we should always come out with these 4 things that we shouldn't, you know, always, whether it's COVID or whether it's hate speech or any situation, we should always come out with 4 or 5 things behaviorally, technically, and activist, you know, activity-wise, what we shouldn't do. What we should do is not the reply of combating to the hate speech and fake news, but what we shouldn't do is we must be ready with all the time. So even if you broadcast this talk, I think we should broadcast one poster saying what you shouldn't do as hate speech to fight it. Thank you.
Actually, you know, I feel, yes, sometimes hate speech is there. Sometimes it's embedded. So unfortunately, there is lots of hate speech because groups of people hate certain religions or certain ethnicities or certain nationalities. But sometimes hate speech comes because of situations of development in context that was unpredicted. And I feel it's very important to really put lots of serious and quick, very quick effort to combat and dismantle this hate speech before it develops into vicious cycles of violence. And the responsibility for quick action falls first on journalists, because, for example, in the Palestinian case, our journalists, whether those who write online or in national newspapers, played a big role in writing commentaries or writing articles against certain decisions taken whereby people were discriminated against, and which really created hate speech. It's very important to have open channels of communication with the officials, whether it's the president or the prime minister. And in our case, we have a very intelligent prime minister who is very sensitive and who is really keeping an eye on developments in the streets. So when people are angry or they hate certain things or don't appreciate something, it reaches him through certain channels, whether directly through journalists, via journalists, or through observations on monitoring of online media, and he immediately takes action. So he is very actually sensitive to how not to feel people angry. And because of his very quick actually interventions, he managed to solve many very situations that could have turned into something very serious. And I want also to emphasize a third player when it comes to dismantling hate speech. It's the role that could be played with influencers. Influencers have big followers, and once you get them on board, once they believe in an issue and they write about it, you find that their impact and influence is very, very big. And I think all of us, through hashtags, through statuses and so on, we can also like declare what is our position when it comes to certain developments involving hate speech, and we can stand very strong and refuse it, and this will and this will resonate and drive people to change policies or behavior or speeches against certain targeted groups in hate speech.
Brilliant. That's a perfect note to end this roundtable discussion. I would like to thank everyone that attended here in behalf of MILEN. Thank you very much for being here with us. If you have any questions or if you think of anything later and you want to ask our experts, I'm going to use Hania's cue, and you can use the hashtag AskMilen. Just send us our questions and we'll have our experts to answer them. Soon enough, we'll have on our next MILEN Roundtable discussion. We're most welcome to join. We'll be sharing our social media as well at MILEN Network. We'll be seeing all of you there. Thank you very much.